Hi, this is Everett, Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. Today I'm going to go over another special color, blue. But what I'm doing is I'm transcribing to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Twitch. And my wife Gloria is in the studio today.
Hello, everyone.
And she's going to help with the messages and keep anything going on wrong. We'll keep track of everything. So today I'm going to be doing another painting, and I'm going to call it the Sky and Watercolor Blue. So you can see I'm wearing my blue shirt today for the color blue. So this is the third primary that I've done. I've done red, yellow, and now today I'm going to do blue. So I think you'll find this to be an interesting painting. Painting skies and painting water is always a little challenge, but I'll show you my methodology and show you how I do it. So let's go over to my painting table. I got to find my main camera. I go over to my overhead camera. Okay, let me take you over to my main painting table and let me get started. All right. Okay. Now I'm going to turn on the chat. Okay, the chat's on. If you wanted to send a little message, say hi, and also if you have questions or make any comments, we can take a look at that. The primary focus today is the color blue, and you can see here by the color wheel that the primary blue, and then I'm also going to be using yellow and red, the other primaries. And also going to be working on, you can look at on the color wheel, you can also see the values, the light, medium, and dark values of blue. Okay. Now, Holbein, we have 13 colors of blue. Correction, 19 colors of blue. And you can find those on my website, everettswatercolors.com. You can find all the colors that are available there. I'm going to be using 5 of the blues today. I'll go over those in a moment. This is my inspiration today. I found a picture here on the internet. This showed some water here. That showed a little piece of land here with a small little house with a lighthouse on the end. So that's going to be part of my composition right here. And then I found another photograph which has some rocks in the foreground, and I thought that'd be an interesting part of the composition also. So rocks in the foreground, lots of water, and a little lighthouse with some little piece of land over there. Okay. So my composition today, I took that idea of the water. I've got the little island over here, inlet with the lighthouse on there. Then I've got the water, and I've got some large rocks here in the foreground. So that's going to be the composition I'm going to do. Now, also what I did, as I've always done in the past, I start out by doing a color study. And I'm going to use the 5 colors in my palette today. The first one is going to be Cerulean Blue, which is up here in the top left. Cobalt Blue, which is the second color in a row. Then Ultramarine Blue to the right of that. And then Peacock Blue, which is the next blue. And it's got a little bit of green in it. You can see the little green tint in it. And then the other color, which is the darkest blue I have in the palette, is Royal Blue. Then I'm also going to use Alizarin Crimson. I'm going to also use a little bit of yellow-orange. And, of course, lemon yellow and a little bit of burnt sienna today for the rocks and so forth. Now, what I did here on my color study is I've taken those blue colors. Here's a cerulean, and I've added a little bit of water. For example, I put this as the full paintbrush here, right out of the palette. Then each layer. Now then I add a little bit of water. I just put my brush into the water, went back the second stroke. Then I went back, got more water, the third stroke, and the fourth one I put some more water in the brush in the fourth stroke. You can see as I added more water, the color got lighter in all the values, which makes sense. So I can look at what color I want to do. If I want to get a lighter value, I just add water to the color to get me a lighter value. Now down here at the bottom, I did a little mixture here. I used a little bit of Alizarin Crimson, a little bit of the yellow, a little yellow lemon, and a little bit of burnt sienna, and it'll give me a nice brown color. And notice this gray. The gray here, I made a mixture of Ultramarine Blue, Alizarin Crimson, and the lemon yellow, and it gives me a perfect neutral gray. I did the mixture down here at the bottom of the page. This is a mixture, and I also did it. I showed the same example over here. So that color, the three primaries mixed together, the yellow, the red, and with the ultramarine blue, gives me a perfect gray, which is a neutral color. Okay, and that's usually what will happen if you add all three colors of the primaries together. You'll get a gray color. In this case, it's almost a perfect neutral color here. Let me set this aside. And here's my sketch. I'll go ahead and transfer this to a watercolor paper. This is my standard Gemini watercolor paper, 140-pound, natural, 100% cotton, natural fiber. And it's 15 inches long by 11 inches wide. And I did the sketch here on the watercolor paper. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do today, I'm going to start with the sky, then I'm going to go to the water, and then come to the rocks in the foreground. That's how I'm going to do the painting. And the tools I'm going to use today, the flat brush, I'm going to use the Holbein 3/4 inch synthetic brush, the Holbein 1/2 inch synthetic brush, and I'm going to use the silver brush, silver violet, black violet, number 8, round. So the two flats and a round silver brush, and also I got a silver. I like these mops. I'm going to use these mop brushes also for painting the rocks. So this is a larger mop, and this is a medium-sized mop brush. And those are for a silver brush. So these are black velvet, natural hair, and these are synthetic. And all these brushes are available on my website, everettswatercolors.com. So we'll start out with the. I'm going to use a 3/4 inch flat brush. First of all, and also I'm going to use my hake. This is the large hake, which is a silver brush. This is called the large hake, which is also on my website. And I'm going to, first of all, wet the sky. I'll start out with just plain water. Now, the hake brush is a natural hair. It's a goat hair, natural hair, but it holds a lot of water. So it's good for starting to white down an area, get the water started. So I'm going to do the sky wet on wet. I'm going to take this and put water up here to get the painting started. Put that aside. And I'm going to mix up two colors. I'm going to use a little bit of ultramarine blue at the top. I don't make it too dark, so by adding a little bit of water to it, I'll get a little bit lighter. And I'll start up here, get the sky in, using the 3/4 inch flat brush, synthetic. And as I come down, I'm going to leave a little bit of white space for some clouds. So I'm going to make up a little sky figure here. Then I'm going to pick up a little bit of cerulean. I'm washing out my brush, rinsing out the brush. Picking up a little bit of cerulean blue. And come down here toward the horizon. So I'm going to leave a little bit of white paper. That's going to be the clouds that I'm going to leave up here in the sky. I'm putting a little more water in the brush. What I'm doing is I'm diluting that wash just a little bit because I want it to be a little bit lighter at the horizon line. And I'm going to pick up a little bit more ultramarine and put it a little bit darker at the top of the sky, a little bit darker. And it'll be a little bit darker over here to the left top. The light will be coming from the right to the left. Now it's still wet, so I can do. Now you don't want to mess with the sky too much. You want to get in and get out. But I can do a little bit of tweaking here if I want to, just a little bit, not much. Now that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and dry this. So I'm going to take my hair dryer. And I'll check with the back. Yeah, it's dry. Check with the back of my hand. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is start painting the water. So the sky turned out pretty nice. Leave it just the way it is. Keep the sky simple. A little bit of just the blue. Leave a little bit of white there for the clouds. I'm not going to worry about anything else. It's simple sky, and it's a small area with light value. So that's the lightest value. The Cerulean Blue is my lightest value of blue. So now I'm going to go to a darker blue. This is the royal blue. This is really dark. So I'm going to load the brush, and I'm going to start painting the water. I'm going to start painting the water at the very top. And now it's very important that this is going to be the horizon line. So very important I keep the line straight and level. So using this flat brush and using a horizontal stroke, okay. Now as I come down a little bit, I'll take up a little bit of that. Well, I'm going to leave a little white paper showing, just to show little bits of waves that are forming out there way off near the horizon. Just leaving a little bit of white paper showing. Now as I come forward, I'm going to be picking up other colors, but I'm going to be getting lighter. So the next color I'm going to pick up is Ultramarine Blue, which is my next darker blue. As I come forward, I'm going to be getting a little bit lighter as I come forward. So over here to the left now, this is near the shoreline. I want a gradation. Also want a gradation here. I want a lighter blue here on this side. And as I come across, I want to get a little bit darker as I come over to the right. So I'm doing gradation to the right, and I'm doing gradation as I come forward. And I'll be a little bit darker over here toward the right side. I'm going to leave some white paper showing a little bit of wave flowing out there. A bit darker here on the right. So if the paint is still wet, you can still go back and add a little bit of color in there. I'm going to put a little bigger wave here. As I come forward, the waves are going to get a little bit larger. and a little bit darker to the right. So the gradation here is to give you the sense of depth. Even on a painting like this, you have to have a value change from a light to a dark as I'm coming forward. Okay, now the next color I'm going to pick up is Cobalt Blue. So I'm getting lighter in the value of the color, getting lighter in the color. I'm changing the color. I'm getting a nice variety of blues, different colors. I'm adding a little bit of water because I want it to be lighter. Over here on the left, as I start near the land, the value is lighter. And as I come over here toward these rocks, it'll be getting a little bit darker. As I come forward, it'll be getting a little bit darker. Okay. Now the next color I'm going to introduce is the Peacock Blue. The Peacock Blue's got a little bit of green in it, so it's going to give a nice aqua color to the water. It'll give a nice aqua color. So I'm going to put a little bit of Peacock Blue here in this section. So I'm painting the water, painting really not in sections, but I'm doing it in a series of different colors. And the wave action of the waves coming in. And notice I'm blending that Peacock Blue in with the Cobalt, because that way I want the colors to blend together. I don't want to show any lines or showing any differences of the values as I come forward. All right, now I'm going to pick up a little bit more. I think I'll put a little bit more Cobalt Blue in here. Going back to Cobalt Blue. Start with a light value. Just a little bit of Cobalt, just to give it a variety. I'm really looking for variety now. Just a variety of blue, the blue colors. A little bit of Cobalt here. Pick up a little darker, a little more paint. Make it a little darker next to the rocks. Make this a bigger wave here. Okay, now I'm going to pick up some Ultramarine Blue. So I'm getting even darker now. Ultramarine Blue is my next darker color. So after Royal Blue, then it becomes next darker color is going to be Ultramarine. So I'll start out with I watered it down slightly. So I'll start out with a lighter value next to the landmass out here. Next to the landmass. Then as I come here closer to the rocks, I'm going to introduce a little more pigment. Make it a little bit darker over here next to the rocks. Okay, so there's a variety of different colors of blue, which is the water. The water is changing. You got a current flowing in toward the land, toward the rocks. You've got a different texture underneath the ground. You don't know what's there. It could be rocks underneath. It could be sand. Different parts of what's underneath the water, which changes the color. I'm going to start over. Now, this last section here, I'm going to put in with the royal blue. The last section will be royal blue. And that's my darkest color, so I'm going to come across here, and I'm going to put this in. That'll be my biggest wave right here. Darker, darker next to the rocks. So I'm thinking value. I'm thinking different color. Also trying to leave some white paper showing to indicate the action of the waves and so forth coming in. Okay. All right, I'll let that dry a little bit. So let me give a little air, a little bit of hot air. Let me dry that down just a little bit. Okay. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is we'll work on the land up there. Okay. What take away some of this. I got paint up here on the edges. Be very careful where I got wet paint around the edges. Get that up. Okay. So this is dry, and I'll go back. I'm going in the water a little bit later, but I'll let it dry a little bit more. I'm going to take this one. I'm going to use the Black Velvet Natural Hair. I'll use that one, and I'm going to mix up a little bit of green. And what I'll do here is I'll take a little bit of yellow lemon, and take a little bit of ultramarine blue. I've done this before in my other videos. You'll see I'll mix my greens. I've got green on the palette, but to me, a mixture gives me lots of varieties. So I'd rather mix the greens to give me a variety of greens. And also the colors are different. The colors are I think they're much more natural if you mix them. The pre-mixed colors in the tube are okay, but then I usually add colors to those also because they're too pure. They're not very natural colors. They're just colors. So my advice to you would be to use what colors you have, but then always add changes to it. Use a variety. And today, my tip is going to be you have variety. I got a variety of blues here today. And so use a variety. If you're going to use blue as your main area, and this painting really is, I guess it's a cool dominant, and its dominant blue is its color. So you want to get a variety of those dominant colors. Now I'm also going to have contrasting colors here too, which is what's going to make this interesting. Because along with the blue, you need a complementary color, which complement of blue is orange. So I'm going to be using oranges somewhere in this painting, probably near the rocks. And that will give me a nice contrast to not only the values that I'm using in the colors, but a nice contrast in colors that would give you an interesting change and make the blues really more vibrant by using that complementary color. Okay. All right, then I'll get a little darker, mix up a little bit darker colors here and a darker. So I want a little more, even a little variety here. Excuse me, a little bit of variety here, even in the tree line, by mixing a little bit of darker color. So I'm putting a bit of blue here to show some shadows, a little bit of variety in the colors, not to have the same value or the same color, but to have a variety of color, variety of values. Now, okay. All right, now I'm going to, the only red I have in the painting is the lighthouse and the building. So I'm going to take Alizarin Crimson. I'm going to use that here in the house. So here I'm going to put it up on the rooftop. I'll paint that in. And that's the only place I'm going to use the red at this point. I'll leave my options open, but that's basically my plan, is just to use the red up here. And the red and green is, remember, red and green is also complementary. So that's another complement that I'm using. The red and the green combination. The red rooftop against the red trees, or blue trees, and green trees. The complement is red and green. The green trees against the red rooftop. So I'm using this silver brush natural hair. I'm taking my time here to get the shape that I want. So there's the rooftop along with the front of the house. So that's where the caretaker lives, his house. And I'm going to take that red also, and I can lighten it up just a little bit by adding, always lighten, I add a little bit of water to it. I'm using a natural hair silver brush, black velvet silver brush, round number 8. So here I'm going to put in the lighthouse. So I'm going to I add a little bit of water to my Alizarin Crimson to make it a little bit lighter red. And now I'm painting the shape of that lighthouse at the end of the little island over here, a little patch of land. So that's going to be the lighthouse structure. And look at the scale. Make sure the lighthouse is, it has to be larger than the building. So the lighthouse is on the end of the land. It'll be up a little bit higher, so that it can be seen. Okay, now I'm going to use my darkest blue, which is royal blue. I'm going to put a little top on this lighthouse. And that's all I'm going to show. Just show the top. And between the top and the red is it's going to be estimated that's going to be where the lens is. I'm not going to draw the lens in or paint the lens in. Just leave that as an indicator. Okay, now down at below the trees there, I'm going to put some rocks in. So I'm going to mix up a little rock color. So I'm going to use a little bit of this orange. Yellow orange, it's called. This is Holbein's Artist Quality Paints, which I have all 109 colors on my website. Correction, 108 colors on my website. And so I'll take that orange, maybe mix a little bit of burnt umber with burnt sienna. So I'm going to put a little bit of orange here. Now that will also contrast with the blue water. So I'm going to put a little bit of orange here for rocks. These are rocks. There's sand and rocks and so forth that are next to this little strip of land. A little bit of burnt sienna in there. A little bit of burnt sienna will change the color a little bit. Here I'm modifying, just modifying that orange color a little bit with the burnt sienna. Give a little variety. And what I can do, I'm gonna let that dry a little bit. I may go back and do a little more correction on that. Now, I can do now is just take that dark blue, which is royal blue, get a nice fine point on my brush, and I can go ahead and put the little bit, put the doorway here, maybe in this building, little door and a window, and maybe another window. So gives a little definition for that building. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry. Now I'm going to go ahead and start working on the rocks. Now the rocks are two ways that we can approach these. I'm going to use one of the ways I like, which is just to put in some color with lots of variations of strokes. I'm rinsing out my brush real good. I'm changing color. I'm taking all that blue out of there. Taking the blue out of my brush. And mix up that orange. Orange and burnt sienna is a good mixture. I'm going to start putting some of that color down here on these rocks. And I'm going to vary the color. I'm going to start out with a little bit of this orange color. That's kind of the highlights. The orange is kind of the highlight of the rocks. The type of rocks are along the coastline here. And then I'm going to pick up different colors out of my palette. Let me get a little more of that orange. A little more orange. And now I'm overlapping that the blue there of the ocean. So this is going to have a hard edge because it's a rock, and hard edges signify the object. Rocks are rugged. They have hard edges. Therefore, a hard edge would indicate rock. So that's one way to describe. I mix a little bit of blue. Let me get a little more yellow, a little more orange up here. I'm really popping that orange in there to give it a real indicator. So the rocks are going to come forward because they're right here in the front. They have a you got a higher intensity of color. A lighter color comes forward, so the orange will be lighter than the blue. So it comes forward. Also, the value of what I'm putting on here is lighter, which brings it forward. The blues is a receding color, so it will take your eyes back. So that's really the purpose of the orange and blue. The orange and blue gives you the sense of depth. That sense of depth. Now I'm putting a little more burnt sienna now, a little more burnt sienna in this mix. I'm doing a variety of colors, and you notice the brush strokes. I'm using a variety of brush strokes. And I think that's the only advice on when you're painting rocks is to use a variety of brush strokes and also a variety of colors. This is a very colorful set of rocks. I'm going to leave a little bit of white paper showing. That'll give a little glistening. That'll be the shimmer off of the water, maybe the wet rocks. A little bit of water is hit up on top of the rocks, and the sunlight has hit that, so it'll be a little shimmer of the light hitting on the rocks, the wet rocks. So all these things go into my mind. As I'm painting, I'm visualizing the object. Here I'm adding in some more blues. I'm picking up all the colors that are in my palette now. Just the blues I mixed in here. Ultramarine, the Cobalt Blue, that dark royal blue. So all these colors will mix together to give us a nice dark color. Now I'm making the paint a little bit thicker in some areas. Again, give me a little, this will be a little more texture down here in the foreground because it's closer. It's also a lead-in to the actual paintings. So it doesn't have to be a lot of detail. It doesn't have to be a lot of detail, just an indication, maybe a little interest here, but it moves you into the painting by giving interesting colors, a variety of colors. Let's see. Ultramarine Blue. Over top of that. Burnt Sienna. Browns. Okay. Make sure my corners are a little bit darker so that the eyes don't fall as the painting. Keep the corners a little bit darker than the rest of the painting. Okay, now a technique that is good to use sometimes is this is an old credit card that was just cut up into pieces. And what I'm going to do here, while the paint is still a little wet, and that's fine, is I'm going to do some scraping, just a little bit of scraping. So I'm going to start up here, just a little bit. And I'm going to scrape in some corners and edges. To give some shapes. Rock shapes, angular, have edges, shape of a rock. Smaller rocks, larger rocks. Okay. All right. That'll give the texture of those rocks, let them dry a little bit. Now, what I'll do now is just going to do a little bit of fine tuning here. Brush. Yeah. Now, the half-inch Holbein brush, what I'm going to do here is take a little bit of blue. I'm going to use Cobalt Blue. And kind of a middle value, just kind of put a little bit of water right on top of the brush. Make sure it's clean. Now I'm going to go in. I'm going to do just a little bit of cleanup on the water. So what I'm going to do here is go in and do some of these edges, and also put a little bit of variation, maybe a wave with that's a little bit of shadow underneath the wave. So here I can add a little bit of value now to these shapes. Just a little bit, just indicating that there's movement out here in the water. I don't want to overdo this, but I want to get some action, get a little bit of action here in the water. And this here by putting a little bit of value change. I like this. This was the Peacock Blue. I'm going to leave that alone. Let that be flat because I don't want to put marks in every section, but especially around these white areas, I want to put a little bit of shadow in there just to show maybe a little curve in the wave portion. A little bit of motion there, A little bit of definition. Some of these white specks are okay because that could be waves splashing up and down. Taking a lot of the sharp edges off a little bit, not bad. But I want motion coming. I want motion coming into this way. It was the dark, and I went into lighter and darker. So I got like a, the clouds are causing some of these dark areas are caused by the clouds. The sun is coming in, but the cloud over here would make this a little darker. There's a little patch here that's open. Maybe the sun's shining on the water, and then there's another one here that's a little bit darker. When there's a cloud up there is casting a cloud on the water. So a lot of things happen in the water when the clouds are in the clouds and the sun is working on the water. Okay. All right, and I want to finish up here. Also, I want to finish up here and around the building. I'm going to take a little bit of that light green, which I mixed with the yellow and the ultramarine. So this is a lighter yellow, a lighter yellow-green mix. I'm going to put that on top of this section here just to give a little change of that green. So I'm going to put a little lighter touch of green up here, just to make a transition between the trees. And this would be like maybe taller grass that's growing up behind the rocks. There'll be maybe a little grass around this building. So this is like the tall grass that's around the rock area, just to give a little change, okay? And I'm going to leave the white paper here because as the surf is coming through, it's going to be splashing up on those rocks. So that white line there is very important to show that there's action over there along the edge of the water. I'll leave that alone. And then down here in the rocks itself, I can go in with just a few lines. And I think I'll use ultramarine blue. Ultramarine blue. And I'll use the black velvet. And what I'll do here is I'm going to put a couple lines in here just to give maybe a signification of a shadow, a depression here. So I'm giving a little more depth to these rocks here. Just indicating a little depth in these rocks. Little shadows. Build up some of the mystery here of what's going on. Maybe a little bit in here. There's a light edge and there's a dark edge. A light edge here, a dark edge. A little shadow in there. Don't want to overdo this, but this is just giving me a little just gives a little more variety to the edges, and also maybe define some of the rock shapes. So this is just adding a little touches on here, just a few touches. Okay. And I think all these art supplies I'm showing, the brushes and the paints and everything is all on my website, including the watercolor paper. Is all available on my website, everettswatercolors.com. What I'm going to do, this area down here looks a little bit light. So what I'm going to do is take some ultramarine blue, a little bit of ultramarine blue. And I'm just going to go in here and just tone this down up in the corner here. Just tone it down. Now, what invariably happens is I let the painting set for a day or two, and I'll come back and I'll usually work on it some more. So right now I want to, I think that will complete what I wanted to show today was the painting blue for the sky and water. Now let's put this thing under. Let me dry off the edges here. A little bit of wet paint right here. And there's some over here. Over here. And what I'd like to do is if I can take this corner, I'll take this. Let me take the tape. Let me take the tape off. I even used blue tape today to hold down the paper. And actually, when you put tape around the painting, it gives you a nice little border also. So that's another good idea to have. Okay, I'll line that up. Now let's put a mat around that. So I'm going to put a white mat. Let's put a white mat around it. And the viewpoint I have, that's almost 90% of it showing. Okay. All right, so this the white mat, and of course it's got a dark blue border on it. That kind of shows off the blues in the paint. I think that really turned. And I think the contrasting colors, the orange bouncing against the blue, is very effective. That contrast between the orange and the blue contrast here, the orange and the blue up here around this area. So there's a complementary mix here of orange and blue. There's also a secondary area of orange and blue. So it's repeated up here, which is also good. You got blue in the sky, you got blue in the water, which is another good indication. And there's a darker shadow down here from the sky and the clouds and so forth. Okay. Okay, I'm going to show you one other painting I did, and also another idea. But I'm going to set this on the side. And I think that turned out pretty good. I really like the way it happened. I like the action. The waves are really coming in. I see them rolling into the surf. I really see that. And I left a little bit of white over here right next to the rock to show maybe some waves splashing up on the rocks. But we can also work on that. So here's another one I did. And what I did also on this one, I used my spray bottle. Now this is a palette in a bottle, which is sold exclusively on Everett Watercolors. And this is the dot sprayer. And I have Chinese white here in the spray bottle. This is a dot sprayer. So the dot spray pattern will come out in dots. And I used it over here in this corner over here. What I was going to show was just the way you use that is, and I use a little plastic shield here so it doesn't get around everything else. And then I hold it up here, and a very light tapping motion. A light tapping motion, you can get a nice splatter of the white dots. And that gives you indication of the water splashing up on the rocks. That's another possibility that could be done to give it a little more texture, a little more look. I could also use the spray bottle with water in, just plain water. Palette in a bottle. That's my spray bottle. EverettsWatercolors.com. And I went in and I sprayed around on the rocks. And the water drops will also give me texture in the rocks itself. That's another application there. And also I added some birds up in the sky. And you can see I took a small natural hair black velvet and just took some dark paint, ultramarine blue, and went and just did 3 or 4 birds up in the air. Okay. So this is a similar painting I did for practicing, but there's extra techniques I could have done. Is to put the splatter in there for splashing up of the waves, add some birds in the sky. But that's the same effect we'd have on this particular painting. You can see the flow of the water coming off the ocean there. So that one worked out very well too. So 2 good paintings. So let me go to my let's go to my main camera. Just turn my light. Yeah. Coming back to the main camera. Yeah, okay. Well, that was my my interpretation of blue sky and water, which I love. Blue is one of my favorite colors, so I was looking forward to painting in blue anyway. So, and I thought about the subject matter, and obviously water was one of the big subject matters I love to paint. And it's always a challenge, especially when you're painting the waves. When you get the waves coming in, you have a general plan, but then you you need to think about what's happening. And if you study water coming in from the ocean or in from anywhere, and with the wind blowing and the direction of the waves and so forth, you have to come up with a pretty good plan of what you want to show and how you're going to capture that. So I think the blues, I think the 5 different colors of blue I used today was very effective. I think the Peacock Blue mixed in with the opera, or mixed in with the ultramarine and cobalt, showed to be a nice variation of blues. So I really enjoyed doing that today. Now that you're on my Facebook and on my YouTube, I want to give me some comments, questions, and maybe some ideas of things you'd like to see me do in the future. I'll be looking forward to seeing that. So give me some comments on what you think and how you like it. Next week, I'll probably be a little bit later. I have an appointment earlier during the day. So in order to give myself time to be ready for next week, I'll be back next Thursday, and we'll probably start about 3 o'clock instead of 2. But I'll put the announcement out, but it'll just be an hour later. But I'll be back again next week on Thursday. So I'll be back next week.